You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
And the Pittsburgh Steelers become the first franchise in history to win 6 Super Bowls.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Touchdown! Kansas City! Damian Williams!
Forward, diving to the goal line! A touchdown! And a title for the Patriots!
What do you think having a 37-year-old?
We're on to Cincinnati.
What's up, beautiful people of the UnHinged Sports Network? Another week of NFL Unhinged. Full house today. Zach makes his triumphant return after missing last weekend. It was a holiday weekend, so we talk about it all the time. This isn't like a job for anybody, so family stuff is more important. We missed you last week. We could have used your insight into how the Bears were going to completely fall apart towards the end of last week, but glad to have you back. And got the rest of the gang here, DJ Kelsey from the High Low Sports Podcast, my co-host from Far End of the Bench Podcast, Nico Bryant, and we have the returning weekly champion and best overall winning percentage of the J-Dash show, Jim Yurnay. How's everybody doing this week?
Doing good.
Can't complain, man. Can't complain. Kelsey's got his dog in the background. We got Jumpman out to something. Zach back this week. Can't complain, man. Gonna be a fun one.
I missed Macho Man
last week. No Macho Man this week. I couldn't. I had a good week, but I don't have as many games on my belt, so I don't have the winning percentage, unfortunately, that you have. But I'll catch up. Don't worry. Ain't no problem.
It was a interesting week, to say the least, last week. We talked about the Ravens-Steelers game. It got postponed even further than what we had talked about, and we had plenty of good conversation about what the NFL should do. Turns out they are going to just go fly by the seat of their pants and decide how everything else goes. I don't know if I planned this out to start the show, but we'll go ahead and talk about it because basically everybody else has talked about it. The Kendall Hinton Denver Broncos situation. It was the Woj bomb to end the show last week. Thank you, DJ. Ruined Nico's Saturday night. All 4 quarterbacks for the Denver Broncos come down with COVID-19. Kendall Hinton gets pulled off the street. A practice squad wide receiver to play quarterback. Did probably as good as you could expect to do when you're given 24 hours notice and you haven't even been in the facility. But Nico, since you're the resident Broncos fan, what did you think of the whole situation? And I know this is going to get into it right away, but go ahead. Let's hear it.
Well, it's very unfortunate that came out right as we ended it, because I 100% would have switched my pick. I would have no chance in hell picked Kendall Hinton to beat the Saints. I would have been smarter than that, so that's unfortunate, but I'll let it slide by because it did happen at the end of the show. But I give the kid a lot of credit. Like you said, he had 24 hours. There was only about 25, 30 plays in the playbook, which is absolutely insane to think if you're going to win a football game to have that happen. It's unfortunate that it worked out like that, but in my opinion, like there's no way that game should have happened. There's absolutely no shot that should have happened. The Ravens-Steelers game, there was a lot of more tested positive and blah, 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 but a whole position group, especially the most important position on the offensive side, and not having to sign someone off the practice squad who hasn't thrown a football in over 3 years is absolutely asinine. That's just terrible. It's terrible on the league. Just if we had Lamar Jackson as the Broncos quarterback, do you think the game would have postponed? I'm going to say yes, because that's just the NFL's playing their favorites. They could care less about the Broncos game, and the fact that we're Sunday Night Football this week too plays into that factor too. It's ridiculous that they let that happen. Another thing about that is Drew Lock, Blake Bortles, and Brett Rippon all have tested negative since that, which is also asinine to me too. You can't move it back to Monday and would give them one more day to test negative because they've tested negative since Thursday. That's just stupid in my opinion. Absolutely stupid. They have, because they were around someone who had it at one time in the week, they were all deemed to be out completely, which is ridiculous in my opinion. If they all tested negative going up to Sunday and they needed one more day to pass full protocols, then you should have pushed it back one more day. It's just absolutely insane with how Roger Goodell handled that whole situation. He's playing his favorites, obviously, and just being ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about it on our show. Looking ahead at the schedule, it was Broncos-Chiefs this weekend. We know that the NFL is going to do whatever they can to make sure that Patrick Mahomes continues to play in primetime. But, I mean, there's also the two situations were compared a lot last week. The Ravens and Broncos, I think, were in two completely different situations. Zach, what did you think as just I mean, you weren't on the show last week, so you didn't get to experience the Woj Bomb live, but of that situation, what do you think went wrong, and what do you think played into the NFL's handling of it?
Well, honestly, Jimmy, you kind of led into what I was going to say. I'm actually defending the NFL on this one. Look, the Baltimore Ravens situation is completely different than Denver. Denver had mostly control of their situation. They put their quarterbacks in general, I speak, put themselves at a risky position. And by NFL protocol, if you are in a close contact scenario with someone that did test positive for COVID-19, you do have to wait those days. Also, those quarterbacks have come out, Blake Bortles in general and Drew Lock have both said that they both were in the wrong. They did not follow protocols in their own facility as well. So they have already laid the blame on their own end. I know that it looks like it's hypocritical. And yes, we can debate on if the NFL defends its stars and will go star first, because yes, Lamar Jackson is a profitable star for the league. But comparing it to the Ravens situation, I think is a little ridiculous, considering that the Ravens were out of control. The NFL didn't even know what was going on half the time and had to contact trace like crazy to even keep this up. With the Broncos, this was a pretty controllable scenario that really already players have said themselves, they didn't hold themselves to an accountable position. That's why I don't completely feel as sympathetic for having that situation where Kendall Hinton has to step in, because if they had just taken the proper precautions when they went in for a day of film work, from what I have understood from the situation. Now, again, not every detail is released because COVID details and all you can't completely dig. But if it was just a film day and the quarterbacks went in and didn't follow one day of protocol out of every other day, you still need to follow it. That's your job. And if you are not following the protocols that your league is setting out, that you're trying to set an example in your own facility and maintain those facility practices, that's why I'm completely fine. And Adam Schefter said it the exact same way on Monday Night Football Countdown. As of this past week, quote, and this is not really a quote, it's more of a synopsis of it, but essentially, Denver had their situation for COVID under control. Jeff Driscoll was the only one that week that tested positive. Those quarterbacks were nearby with no mask on, and they put themselves in a risk position based on the NFL's protocol. Whereas the Ravens, it was a personnel trainer that had to be disciplined. However, because it was at a in-between week where they had to check out what players were doing going into the Titans game that week, then going into this past week where they had to back it up, that is a completely different situation in my mind, which is why I'm fine with this. I will argue that maybe the Ravens should have taken a forfeit just for how careless the trainer was at the Ravens facility, but I will not argue that the Denver Broncos deserve to get their chance to get a quarterback, because quarterbacks had a chance to play and they put themselves at risk. That is on them, in my opinion, and they already said it's on themselves too.
Yeah, it just seems like there was a better way to go about it almost. If you did push it back to Monday night, have 2 Monday night games, maybe one of the quarterbacks of the 4 possibly gets to play. And I think if there's a quarterback that plays for the Broncos, it's a totally different situation. Kendall Hinton was set up to fail no matter what. I was surprised that they even mustered up 3 points. The defense played absolutely unreal, because that game could have been a lot worse than just, I think it was 38-3 or something like that.
31-3 blowout, but you're absolutely right. And fun little stat from that, the last time a quarterback has had more interceptions than completions in a game was 1998 with Ryan Leaf at the San Diego Chargers. Something I thought was interesting to look up from that horrible week. But, 24 hours, I get it. But again, it was your ball was in your court. You had control. You didn't keep control. That's how I see it.
I'll let everyone else finish, but I have something that'll oppose that. But I'll let everyone else do their thing.
I'll come back to you. I wanted, because I know Jim follows Brady still, so you're kind of in tune with what the NFC South is doing. In your mind, did this kind of show a little bit more weakness in the Saints than we were expecting? Because they did kind of blow everybody out, but I think it was more based on the defense. And that offense without Drew Brees, for as much as I don't think Drew Brees is a quality quarterback as he used to be, I think he's kind of nearing the Peyton Manning 2015 range where he can put you in good situations, but he's not going to make too many plays. Did this kind of show a chink of in the Saints' armor, Jim, in your opinion?
Well, you're talking about an aging quarterback who's had this level of excellence. What, maybe 5 years ago is when the Breeze was at his top of his game. What's the year that he almost won MVP? Was that like 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think around 3 years ago is when it started to really drop off.
One thing about Father Time likes to catch up to you at bad times in your career. Like when it hit Peyton Manning, it hit him fast. and he dropped like a rock. He went from I can complete a 45-yard pass on the dime to I can't feel my fingers. And for Drew Brees, he's getting for him, he has this is mostly just chest contusions from the hit. I think it was a hip
ribs.
day. Yeah, broken ribs.
Like 8 broken ribs, I think.
But he's about the same age as Brady, and both quarterbacks, being honest, are both showing signs of Father Time catching up to him. Brady doesn't have the touch like he used to have, and Breeze has the touch. Is it showing the sign of the weakness of the Saints? Well, not right now, because Taysom Hill does have the ability to, move the pocket, get extra yards on the run that Breeze and Jameis willing to do, and run and try and get yards that way. But for the Saints, they are possibly looking at free agency to get a replacement quarterback here, because I don't think Hill is the franchise after Breeze.
Yeah, I think this was kind of Taysom Hill's shot to be – this was his audition. Sean Payton said that he's got his next quarterback, Drew Brees' successor, in the building. And after this last weekend, when teams finally the Broncos knew that they were going to go up against Taysom Hill, they finally had film on him. That always kind of slows a young quarterback down who doesn't have that much. I wanted to talk a little bit, too, because the other part of this situation, and I don't know if it's a national news thing, but the comments that Fangio made – about the quarterbacks who did, have to sit out. I feel he wasn't wrong in anything that he said. We talked about it a little bit on the far end of the bench, just because it was a relevant topic. Vic Fangio also got fined. He also cost the team earlier in the season. DJ or Kelsey, do you guys agree with the coach kind of throwing that whole position group under the bus, or should he have handled it a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're the head coach for a reason. You got to hold people accountable. Zach hit it on the head. It's their job to keep themselves, COVID free. Really, like, you got to wear your mask. You got to distance. It's literally your job. You will get fined for it if you don't do it. So, if he calls somebody out, he's a defensive coach. It's what he does. It's what he's always been known for. He's not a very calm, cool, collected guy when it gets down to it. But in front of the media, usually he is. But this time, I mean, I don't blame him. I'd be pissed off too if I had to call in a, receiver from the practice squad that hasn't played quarterback in 5 years. Like, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed off. I'd call somebody out too. But this whole situation is crazy. I mean, I think both the team and the NFL are in the wrong. I think they could have done something so much better. But I definitely don't blame Vic Fangio for what he had to say.
DJ, any thoughts to add before I give it back to Nico to defend the Broncos against the NFL?
I'll start by giving a quick shout out to Noah Fant, who I think is the first player in NFL history to account for 100% of his team's receiving yards in a game. So good for him. That's pretty dope. But my problem isn't really so much with making the Broncos play, considering it's a one position group. Like, as we saw, you technically can play. It's just ugly. It's more of the teams that get outbreaks, get the postponements, and a chance to basically bounce back. If you end up with like 5 or more positives, like the Titans earlier in the season or the Ravens, should probably just be a forced loss at this point, because as we can see, it turns into an absolute mess, because the contact tracing, if you end up with 30 positives, there's no way to play. You keep pushing it. It turns into an absolute mess like this. And if you want to move games, it should be in a situation like this, where you have a position group where there's a lot of positives, so you can push it back a day to Monday Night Football, not Sunday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and a half, like we're seeing right now. So I think they should rethink how they do with outbreaks specifically.
All right, Nico. I know you didn't like what Zach had to say, so I'll go ahead and let you respond.
Let me just start this out by saying, okay, it has to be double standard then, because last Sunday there was a video of Jameis, Malcolm Jenkins, and at least 5 other Saints players dancing in the locker room without masks on. And if we're following all these same rules, then they shouldn't have been able to suit up either on Sunday. That's just if we're playing it based upon they were around each other without masks, and because of that they should not be able to play the next week, then that's fine. But the way I see it also is the Broncos quarterbacks need one more day to test negative. One more day, and they would have been cleared to play in the games. The fact that you waited Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all tested negative, and you couldn't move it back one day. It's not like we were the Ravens situation where we had to move it back to Sunday, and then to Monday, then to Tuesday, then to Wednesday. It wasn't like one of those situations. You can move it back to one day, especially considering it wasn't a primetime game and you still allow a football team to actually be competitive, that just looks terrible in the league. The NFL right now is showing itself that they don't care about their players. They don't care at all. They'll allow the Broncos to get their asses handed to them and let this quarterback come off the street who hasn't played it since sophomore year of college and let him get his ass beat by Cameron Jordan constantly. That's terrible on the NFL. Absolutely horrendous. I mean, that's one of the reasons what we saw with the Ravens too. Some of the Ravens saw how they handled the Broncos situation. It was like, why the fuck would we want even to play for Goodell if he treats his players that bad? This kid hadn't thrown a pass in a very long time. All you had to do was move it back one day, and there would have been a quarterback situation for Drew Lock, Rippon, or Boros. I don't give a fuck. Someone who's thrown a pass in the past year. So it's just terrible that they made it do that. This kid could have been badly injured. Luckily, knock on wood, he wasn't. It's just asinine. You can't move it back one day and let the quarterbacks have that one more negative test, considering they've tested negative every single day since that. And you can't even do that. That's just terrible on Roger Goodell. You're not being a player's commissioner. And if you look at other commissioners like Adam Silver, who's now not testing for marijuana, and people like that, like it looks terrible on Roger Goodell. Absolutely terrible that you throw Kendall Hinton, who hasn't had a single snap in practice, let alone a game since college. So, and throw him out there. That's just asinine in my opinion.
Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm only going to make a quick retort to 2 points, and then I'm gonna you take it as you will for those listening and for anyone else here. But you mentioned of course the finding that the Saints had, and I understand that. But remember, if it's a close contact tracing wise, that's 5 days, so they had time to clear them. Again, Broncos didn't. And if you're talking one day, let me ask you this: why couldn't it be one day that they wore their masks in the facility? One day saved the entire...
If we're being honest, the whole league has done that. Everyone has been around somebody. The only thing that the Broncos is that they got caught on film, and the NFL had to make a statement and punish somebody, and that was the Broncos, and that's just not how the league should run.
They're not the only ones. The Ravens are being punished right now too. You have Saints being investigated. I'm just saying.
I do have 1 point to add to this. And again, it's probably just because I live in Denver, so I get to hear a lot more about the situation. They just talk about it more. The ownership issue that's been going on since Pat Bowlen entered the trust with his Alzheimer's, that's really been kind of where we've seen the downfall of the Denver Broncos. Pat Bowlen, he made that a first-class organization. Anybody that you talk to, I said it on Wednesday, Pat Bowlen's the reason that the NFL is on Fox. He's the one who negotiated that TV deal. Everybody likes to give Jerry Jones a credit. But we all know that Pat Bowlen had a whole lot to do with this league and where this league is now, and not having an owner to stick up for you, which is what the Ravens have, and obviously the Steelers, because those two families are some of the most proud in the entire league. I think that's where Goodell probably made that decision to say, hey, you know what, the Broncos kind of shit themselves, so we're going to let them go and deal with it. I'm going to take care of these two teams who actually have an owner in place and can actually tell me what they want, because I don't think that the Broncos Trust really cares any more than just making the money that they can off of the organization.
The last thing I'll just say to that too, I do agree they should have worn their masks. They should have been better with that. But games were postponed weeks later just because of smaller things, and you couldn't have postponed it one day. It's crazy in my opinion.
All right, let's. It's still kind of on the same topic of the COVID stuff, but let's talk about the game that we did see most recently. We didn't get Thursday night football, but we got Wednesday afternoon football because, gotta see the tree lighting. Can't have primetime NFL when the tree lighting's on Wednesday. But we saw a pretty typical AFC North matchup, in my opinion. As a fan of the Bengals, I've watched that division for a long time. It was ugly on offense. Defenses both played really well. But we, again, saw what happens when you don't have your star quarterback able to play for you. RG3, I'll give RG3 his credit. I think that he played better than I could have expected him to. He looked good, looked like he was still fast and everything like that. Kelsey, I know you or DJ tweeted during the game, he still got his wheels. So what did you think about the game on Wednesday? What stood out to you the most?
DJ, I'll let you take it since you were the one talking about RG3 on Wednesday.
Yeah, considering his legs have been shattered 400 times, I thought he could still scoot pretty well. I mean, he looked pretty good running till his hamstring exploded. And he threw a dime of a touchdown. The tight end just dropped at the end of the half. So I thought he looked all right. I mean, he kind of obviously fell apart once the injury kicked in, and then Trace McSorley came in and throws the random touchdown dime and gives us a Hollywood Brown sighting. But I didn't think he looked too bad. I don't know if I want him as a starter necessarily, but it's good to see him actually get out there and play and look pretty solid. So they're not beating the Steelers with him, no chance, or most other teams, but Kind of wish this game was played last Thursday instead of on Wednesday afternoon, but I digress.
Yeah, I was hoping for a Thanksgiving nightcap. That's one of my favorites of that whole holiday, is that you get the Sunday night football game. They eat the turkey leg. Whoever's the player of the game gets the turkey leg. I did want to – I noticed, and this will lead into our next conversation, I noticed that there's some chinks in this vaunted Steelers defense, and that was the Ravens decided that they were just going to come out and attack them with a quick trap game because TJ Watt and Bud Dupree rush up the field so hard, and the Steelers' defensive line is really good. They get upfield penetration really quickly. But I think we saw the Ravens kind of figure out how to attack this defense. So, Kelsey, are the Steelers as good as their 11-0 record? Let's just throw that out there as a question, and I'll get everybody's opinion on this because I know everybody probably has something different to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a team, last year barely broke 500. There's still a lot of work to be done. They're still really young defensively. So there is some issues, and especially that the interior of that defensive line, they're hit and miss. It's very much it's like, any streaky shooter in basketball. It's the same concept with the defensive lineman. If they can get a rush early and they can break the defensive line down or the offensive line down early, then yeah, they'll have a great game. But if they're in a tight situation and they have to try to make a play, I don't think the defensive line is good enough. I mean, yeah, they have Watt. Yeah, they have, a star-studded secondary. But I think this team, you mentioned the quick traps, the read options, the things that Baltimore did to throw them off guard. And, I mean, it worked. The fact of the matter is it worked. And it worked with the backup at quarterback. So that's something to be said there. So it's, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think they're not as good as their record. I do think they're a winning team. I do think they deserve to be at the top of this division, but I don't think they're deserving of an undefeated title right now.
Yeah, and Jim, as a fan of another team, the only team to go finish a completely perfect regular season, the New England Patriots,
Remind me.
Well, I mean, I know that season didn't end how all you mass holes wanted, but do you see anything that actually shows Pittsburgh being worthy of being 11-0 right now?
Honestly, they're 11-0 for a reason. They're winning football games, and in the NFL, it's difficult to win games no matter who is on the field. But to touch the point about the Ravens from last week and the Broncos from last week, I felt like I was in the 2000s from Twitter because Tim Tebow was trending, Kyle Orton was trending, RG3 was trending, and Brock Osweiler was trending. I'm like, holy shit, we're blast from the past. What's going on? And I was like, oh, they're talking about the Broncos situation and the Baltimore Ravens. I'm like, okay. I was like, dear God, well, I thought it was the 2000s again. But the Steelers are the Steelers for a reason. They know how to win games, and honestly, some of the teams that they have to play, it's been put in their schedule. They don't go out and, go look for these teams to play. It's not college where you can schedule your non-conference opponents. You got to play who's on your slate. And if you look at some of the quarterbacks they played against a couple of backups. They played against a 6th-round draft pick down in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago. They played against defenses that are
against the Broncos. Jeff Driscoll started against them.
They've played against defenses that are completely injury-ridden. I think earlier this year they had a whole play against a whole defense that was all on COVID list. But still, it's the National Football League. These are the best players in the sport. There's a reason why they're NFL. But, yeah, they're 11-0 for a reason. It's because they're winning football games. And when push comes to shove, no matter what, they're going to finish the season 11-5 at worst. But as a Patriots fan, to the Steeler fans out there, yeah, you don't want to go undefeated into the postseason. You're just asking for trouble because it would have been perfect to have a 20-0 season, but, it was 19 in David Tyree. So, so thank you for reminding me about the undefeated season. Thank you.
You're welcome, because we're spending this much time on the Steelers. I got to at least piss somebody else off. So now that they have the best record, and I think they have a possibility of finishing the only other team left on their schedule worth anything. They do play the Browns, but they have the Browns number. That's basically a big brother, little brother situation. They play the Bills in not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. That's going to be a tough test for them. But Zach, they have the best record in the AFC. Are they the best team in the AFC?
Definitively no. I will say that right now. I'm going to say that if you're going to get to the AFC Championship game, the Steelers can get there, but they will not get past the Kansas City Chiefs. Reason being is I would have to say that's the most explosive offense that is in the AFC. Kansas City obviously is an opportunistic defense, much like how they ran it to Super Bowl 54 last year. I do not see the Steelers moving on past Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's unit if I were to put them head-to-head. And I think we're going to truly see how far this Pittsburgh Steelers unit can go in the final weeks. Washington, as much as for their record's sake, is one of the best overall defenses in the NFL. Hard to believe, but it's true. They are a top 10 unit. Buffalo obviously is a more well-rounded team, one of the premier AFC opponents right now, and you're going to get the Colts, which you can't slouch on them either. The evidence I would say to where if you're going to argue Pittsburgh's not, quote unquote, if I'm going to put it, cupcake, would be the Titans game, because that was a pretty contested game. Yeah, there's some calls didn't go the Titans' way, but that was one that the Tennessee Titans have come back on strong after a 2-game lull in their schedule. They look like a premier team as well in the AFC, which is pretty stacked. But if I'm going to take a bet on them making the Super Bowl, I would not put a confidence bet on it. I'd say Kansas City is still your overall. And that Oakland loss, it's a divisional opponent. Divisional opponents know their divisional opponents better than anyone else. So I just chalk it up to that in particular. And the Raiders have been playing the Chiefs the best out of anyone in the AFC this year.
Well, Mike Mayock and John Gruden basically said we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that we can beat the Chiefs. And they accomplished that. And I think even going back to the Sunday night game where the Chiefs came back and won, that's only because it's Patrick Mahomes on the other sideline. The Raiders played absolutely flawless football, and it just ended up being the wrong thing. Nico, do you think that it's a good thing for the Steelers to remain undefeated? Do you think they benefit from a couple losses to kind of remind them that they are human? I mean, I know if I was a fan of a team, I don't want them to go undefeated because I think that puts too much in their head. Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment?
Well, first of all, we're forgetting about the Dolphins' undefeated season 2. Patriots weren't the only ones to do it. So don't forget about that before we move on to that, Jimmy. Don't forget
they give
about
themselves enough
Tibbet.
credit. They give themselves enough credit. I don't need to give them any more.
So
So
they're
do Patriots fans.
That's
So
just
do
the
Patriots
facts,
fans.
Jimmy.
It's nice when there's only 12 teams in the league when the Dolphins win.
Hey, that's still an undefeated season either way. But to go on that point, the thing that people are forgetting that aren't really taking into account the Steelers versus Chiefs thing is, if the Steelers do win out and say the Chiefs lose one more game, or the Steelers lose one game and Steelers have home field advantage, that going into Pittsburgh in late December or early January, it may not be easy. Yes, there's no fans there, but it's still going to be cold. And yeah, Patrick Mahomes is really good in the cold. That could be something completely different if the Chiefs don't have home field advantage. That's something to put into account. I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, though. Pittsburgh is – they're finding ways to win, so I do give them a lot of credit. So that's going to help them going into the playoffs. I don't think they'll win out. I do think they'll have a slip up along the way. But if they are able to hold that number 1 seed down, they are going to be very formidable, and they will have a very good shot making the AFC title game. And then if you do have the number 1 seed and Chiefs are number 2 or whatever, and then you have to have the Chiefs go to you, that gives you a little bit of an advantage, even though there's no fans there. So that's a small little thing that could help them in the long run. Defense did show kinks, but I think it was just an off week, if we're being honest. They still have a lot of great studs over there. TJ Watt is right out there for Defensive Player of the Year. Mika Fitzpatrick is the top 3 safety in the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of good studs, so I don't hate them on that. And then the offense is still getting gelled all together. Big Ben is finding out that Chase Claypool is his number 1 option right now, and he's still not incorporating him in everything he does. So that's one thing that I start focusing on more on, especially come playoff time. So I don't hate them at all. I do think they're a team that could be right on the cusp of an AFC title game if they hold home field advantage. That's for sure. But I do believe the Chiefs are still the best team in this conference. There's no doubt in my mind. What they did last week, especially against the Bucs, was absolutely asinine.
Well, Pittsburgh's not a lock because the divisional round matchup may be against either the Titans.
Well, they'll also have if they're the number 1 seed, they'll have the bye.
Well, yeah, but you have the Bills or the Titans after just a week after.
That's true. That's true. Either way, that bye week does help, especially in how everything's been going this year with the amount of injuries. That could give them a week to rest up, especially week 18 if you have the number, week 18 if you or 16 or 7. I'm stupid. Week 17. Week 17 if you have if you already have the number 1 seed locked up, you technically will have 2 bye weeks because you could throw you could do what the Colts did way back when, and don't care about undefeated season, just care about being healthy.
Yeah,
So
And
that's
there's a
something you could see also.
possibility of the NFL doing 8 teams in the playoffs too. There's
Yeah,
still
I'm pretty sure they are doing that too.
and if that's the reason, they'll be playing the Raiders, and the Raiders have shown signs of knocking off top teams, but they've also lost to teams that they're not supposed to lose to.
Here's one thing that I will say, and this will probably be the end of this segment because we're running out of time on the Zoom meeting. The Steelers, they don't have as many injuries as a lot of the other teams across the league, but I would say they have some of the most important injuries. Bud Dupree just tore his ACL on Wednesday, and Devin Bush, their stud middle linebacker, who I think the Broncos are still kicking themselves for not drafting because he's just absolutely incredible. He's been out for most of the season. He's not going to be able to come back either. And those are two key players that you're going to need to attack this Chiefs defense. I think Devin Bush is able to at least hold down the middle of the field, so you can use Minka more over the top to try and cover up the speedsters on the outside. But those two injuries, while they're only a couple injuries, are pretty integral for, I think, their success moving forward. And we could see a totally different defense without Bud Dupree. Now offenses can just slide all the way to TJ Watt. So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline moving forward. We're going to go ahead and get into the first break of the show. We'll get a little message about Fanatics, our partner that we recently acquired on the UnHinged Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the NFL Unhinged show on the UnHinged Sports Network.
Benchwarmers, this week we have a special thing. Fanatics is sponsoring our first segment of the week. So it's the center of attention, brought to you by our friends over at Fanatics. Be sure to go check it out. It's every Monday as we're talking about this. They have great deals all week. But now, without further ado, man, let's get into everything now. I mean, my center of attention this week is going to revolve around the commissioners of all the leagues.
This is my blues.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to NFL Unhinged. Had some good discussion about the COVID situation that ended up happening last weekend with the Broncos, the Ravens, and Steelers. Switching around to now, for me, it's the best news that I saw all last week. But Joe Burrow, we talked about his injury a couple weeks ago, tearing his ACL, MCL, and having other stuff wrong with his knee. Adam Schefter tweeted, I think Wednesday or Thursday of this last week, that he did have a successful surgery. Everything went better than they expected, and he's expected to make a full recovery. Zach, I'm going to start with you because you didn't get to give your thoughts on how you thought Burrow's season was going until the injury. So how did you think he looked going into the injury, and then what are you expecting from him now that he's going to be able to make a full recovery?
Well, I thought he was making the best of the situation he was given. We all knew Cincinnati was going to be a rebuild coming into this year. So the tools around him. What's that?
Tread lightly.
Hey, I'm just saying, if I'm doing surface level, they were a rebuild. I think most of us could say that in honesty. But given the fact that they got Joe Burrow, this was more of kind of a first year, get his feet wet in the NFL, get him up to speed. And I thought he was doing pretty fine. I actually think back to Deshaun Watson. His first year wasn't overly stellar like he is right now or carrying teams, but he could get the job done on his feet and through the air if he needed to. And he got his feet wet slowly through that season in 2017. Now, as we're talking for recovery, it's kind of ironic I mentioned Deshaun Watson. Watson's mentioned that he would like to help Burrow with recovery. So I am curious to see how that goes. But for his first year, up until, he got injured for, of course, being hit the most in the league for a quarterback, I thought he was doing pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I said it. I think he's about a year ahead of where you thought he was going to be. He did more with that pretty banged up offense and a terrible offensive line. And AJ Green, who doesn't really look like he wants to play anymore. I think he did probably as well as he could have in that situation. Like I said, I wouldn't mind if we used AJ Green to maybe get some more draft capital or free agency, something like that. But I'll go around the group now. What are we expecting from Joe Burrow in his comeback season? And Kelsey, I'll go to you. What are you expecting?
Yeah, look, this is his surgery. First of all, it's not an easy surgery. I've had the same surgery. It is absolutely miserable. He probably took his off his hamstring, which makes it even worse. You have to that's an extra basically month and a half worth of rehab you have to do because you have to retrain that muscle. So it's gonna hamper what he does best, which is being elusive in the pocket. Don't get me wrong, his throwing is outstanding, but the one thing that helped keep him away from injury up until this point was he was a little more elusive than given credit for. And people, it's one of the underrated aspects of this game. So that's it's gonna take some getting used to for him. But by no means is it going to hamper him long term. I think next year we're going to see probably some rust those first couple weeks. But by the end of the season, we'll see Joe Burrow exceeding where he was already at, and we'll see, a pretty good transition. I don't think we'll see much of a slump next year from him, but those first couple games, it's going to look bad. And that's more to do with the Bengals than it is to do with him. But, really, it's going to be riding Joe Mixon those first couple games is going to be the goal.
Yeah, it's going to be bolstering places around him so that he's not going to be the only source of anything good on your offense. They're going to have to, I think, go offensive line first early in the draft where they're going to be, and maybe trade back up into the first round and get some other help, because they're basically in the situation they can draft anybody and it'd be fine. Just any position, upgrade any position, they'll be better than they were. Nico, what do you think we're going to see out of a guy like Joe Burrow? He's a confident guy, but when you're coming back from injury, part of it is the physical recovery. The other part of it is the mental recovery. Like I said, he's been pretty confident. He's been banged up before, and he's been able to come back. What are you expecting from Joe Burrow next season?
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here and be the burden of bad news, but we're not going to see anything from him if he doesn't have help. If the Bengals don't go out and sign either a veteran receiver or sign a halfway decent tight end, no Uzoma or whatever, played decently before he got hurt, but they need offensive line help and they need a receiver. If the Bengals refuse to do that this year, then we're going to see something very similar to this year, where Joe Burrow puts up great numbers, but you don't win games, and that's going to hurt the franchise even more. You have to protect him. He is your star player. He's your franchise player, and if the Bengals they haven't been known to do that, and if they aren't able to get him some help, then we're going to see something very, very similar, and he could ruin his career. It's unfortunate, Jimmy, just because you're a Bengals fan, but that's just the reality and fact of it is the Bengals aren't known for keeping players around long, especially if they're injury prone. Carson Palmer is a good one to think about. If you don't protect him, if you don't give him the help he needs, then they're going to go nowhere, and that's just the unfortunate truth.
Nico's going to try and make me cry on the internet. That's what he's trying to do there.
I don't want it to happen. I love Joe Burrow. Dude's so much fun to watch, but you have to get him help. You have.
Yeah. Wasn't Carson there for like 10 years?
Yeah, and he didn't leave the team. He didn't leave. He retired from the team because they decided that they didn't want to do anything to make themselves competitive. He went to the owner and he's like, you guys got to change something because obviously this whole thing ain't working. And Mike Brown basically looked at him and said, hey, I'm Paul Brown's son. I'm going to do whatever I want. And we had a Hall of Fame or borderline Hall of Fame guy. We could have that discussion at some other point. Walk out, decide to retire, and then come back to football later. Jim and DJ, you guys will finish out this segment, and I'll start with DJ. What are you expecting? And you can take into account how bad the Bengals organization is. Are you expecting Joe Burrow to be able to bounce back sooner rather than later?
Depending on what they do to help him out, it will kind of determine wins and losses, I think. But I think him personally, his performance will be similar to when Andrew Luck came back from injury a couple years ago, where the first 5 or 6 games, like you could see there was something there. It just wasn't quite all the way back yet. Then as Joe gets his legs under him, starts to feel healthy, get the game back, you'll see him finish strong at the end of the season. I think he'll be on the pace that he was now towards the end of the season, plus another step, maybe like a 25 touchdowns on the season, something like that. But early on, it's going to be like, oh, God, he's still hurt. Oh, no, he can't move. And then randomly it's going to click, and then he's going to start piecing people up again. So he'll be fine. ACL, MCL injuries these days aren't quite as bad as they used to be. I mean, people are recovering in 5 minutes, 5 months. Phillip Rivers is playing on one in 2007. I mean, they're a lot more healable now, so I think he'll be okay. It's not catastrophic.
All right, Jim, I got a special question for you. Do you think Joe Burrow is going to be able to get himself to possibly be comeback player of the year? And it's going to be difficult because now he's going to have just oogles of people that he's going to be competing with because everybody's getting hurt for the season this year. But do you think that we could possibly see him come back and have the kind of comeback player of the year season that I'm hoping for, at least?
Possibly, but you have to look back at the history of these injuries. I'm going to name you a couple of players right off the back of my hand, basically. RG3, what happened to him? Knee injury. Career went down the tube faster than you can believe. Tom Brady blew out his knee. The next year, he's back in the playoffs. You hopefully, for a Bengals fan, that's Joe Burrow. Mark Brunell over Jaguars blew his ACL out. After that, he was nothing until he got traded to Washington. And, of course, I was going to say Phillip Rivers, but DJ beat me to it. You can't really determine what he's going to be because we haven't seen him play with the injury. Some players will be I'm over it, and we're going to go and kick some ass, and some players are going to, baby it and end up being, RG3, Alex Smith, and you can name 100 more quarterbacks that have blown their ACLs and MCLs. They just favor that leg, and they'll always favor that leg. Luckily for Brady, he had a squad around him. That's what Cincinnati does not have, what Nico just said. Can he be a comeback player of the year? Yeah. If he comes back and, throws for 25 touchdowns and maybe 4 interceptions, yeah, that's a comeback player of the year. But you got to determine if other players who either been hurt this year, like there's a couple players that blew their knees out in, Giant Stadium this year. Seems like it happened in the same week. That could be in contention of a comeback player where I think Barkley's one and that main guy to compete with Burrow. But it all depends on how he recovers and how he feels when he's playing in the NFL on game day with a bum knee that's been repaired.
Yeah, obviously there's more that goes into this. So we're going to say what we're going to say now, and then by the time the season gets around, and who knows, there's still a possibility because it's a 9 to 12 month recovery. So it could be maybe he doesn't recover as fast as they're expecting him to. I'm hoping, against hope that it'll happen, but there's obviously tons of stuff that go into it. Now, another big news story that we mentioned it last week. Now Jim is on board as well. Nico, you got the Jets bet with me on our show that if the Jets end up winning a game this season, they don't go 0-16, you will wear a Jets jersey. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that situation because I was on the Air Raid Attack podcast, and he brought up something that I hadn't actually thought about. If Adam Gase is fired, and I think, I have my own opinions about when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen, but if Adam Gase gets fired, are the New York Jets a attractive coaching opportunity? And if so, why? And I'll start with the other AFC East guy on the show. Jim, is New York, possibly a sleeper place for coaches to land?
It depends on what type of New York franchise you're talking about. As of right now, it's New York. New York is the, Big Apple. It's home to some of the most historical franchises of all sports. That's, the big time. New York Jets are a attractable team. But the question is, it's just not if they are, is the management, is the ownership willing enough to pay the right coach the money to bring the players, to bring the superstars to New York? The Jets haven't had a superstar since what, Vinny Testaverde, maybe? And that's been a long time ago.
LaDainian
Keyshawn Johnson or LaDainian Tomlinson or
Mark Sanchez when he was going to the AFC Championships.
What do you mean, Mr. Fumble?
Can we count Chad Pennington?
I mean,
we can. Yeah,
he's serviceable.
Dead shoulder Pennington.
Yeah, good point. But the Jets over the last 10, 15 years have just went from a consistent wild card team, upset either the Broncos or the Patriots in the playoffs here and there, to averaging 4 wins in the last 5-6 years. That's not the Jets' way. The organization historically has always been a team that's always in the damn playoffs. But you have to have the right coaches there to do it. And Jets are a nice job. Look at the stadium they play in, a beautiful, huge stadium. And still, to this day, we were at week 13. What's week this season in the NFL?
13.
The last team to week 13, the last team to win in that stadium is the New York Guardians in week 5 of the XFL. That's saying something. It's fucking New York. Even though I despise that city as a Boston fan, they are a attractable organization. All of them are. They have passionate fans, and they're treating it like they're, no offense, like the Cleveland Browns and their fan base. New York is bigger than that, and they are a tractable job.
DJ, what do you think the Jets' plan is? Do you think that they're keeping Adam Gase around for a reason? Do you think that they just really don't know what they want to do as an organization? What's that situation in your opinion? Why is that situation the way that it is?
I can't speak for them because I don't know why they hired Adam Gase in the first place. I mean, his entire resume is Peyton Manning's coattails, and Peyton Manning has never said, yeah, he was cool. Peyton Manning's never even said his name before, so I mean, that's got to be an indictment somehow. But if they're smart, I think they fire the GM, they fire him, they basically pick a GM coach tandem that work well together, like most places would do, like Kansas City did with Andy Reid. You get the front office and the head coaching squared away. And I think it's still an attractable job. I mean, it's one of 32 head coaching jobs available. There's only 32 in the world. I mean, anyone with any sort of ego or belief is going to think they could turn that around. I mean, my football coaching experience is my Madden league, and I think I could turn around the Jets in a year. So I imagine BME and a lot of those other guys think they can too. So, and you're probably going to have the first pick, whether you want Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, or you want to trade it back for a king's ransom. That's really attractive. You got a few decent young pieces. I mean, Mehdi Beckham was nice. Denzel Mims is coming along. If you believe in Sam Darnold, he's there. If not, you could probably trade him. Like, I imagine people will still want the job. If the Jets called somebody like, hey, we'll give you $30 million to fix this, just about anyone that gets offered is going to show up, besides Josh McDaniels, because he's kind of a pansy.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels wants to stay in Papa Belichick's pocket. He's going to be all up on the New England train. I don't think that he's actually going to get looked at with the way that his season's gone this year with Cam Newton. I think Josh McDaniels is riding, if you want to talk about riding the coattails of Brady and Belichick with everything that he's been able to do. He's had a great career, a lot of success. Obviously, I'm not a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, never been a head coach in the NFL. I have played Madden quite a bit. I played football for quite a long time, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about. But is there some sort of weird strategy that nobody else is seeing, but maybe the Jets have picked up on? Because keeping Adam Gase around at this point is only so that you can secure that first pick and be able to have your pick of whether you want Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence to be your franchise quarterback. I know that we said the same thing about Sam Darnold. Everybody thought Sam Darnold was going to come in and be that franchise's saving grace. But I mean, Kelsey, do you think that the Jets are possibly seeing something that nobody else is seeing with Adam Gase?
I mean, no, I hope not. I really don't know. Like, let's be honest. What is the point of Adam Gase at this point, except for to be like the Queen of England? He's just a placeholder. He's there. I mean, really, I don't know what's going on. The only thing I could think is somehow they're trying to lure Dabo away from Clemson, or maybe waiting on Harbaugh from Michigan to officially, I don't know. I really don't know what the hell is going on in New York right now. Like, it's being run like a peewee football league where the owner of the franchise, his son wants to coach a football team, and so he's letting him coach. This is the worst head coach I've ever seen. How he still has a job being winless, and exactly what DJ said. Peyton Manning never mentioned him. Peyton Manning mentions all of his coaches. Everybody who's ever influenced any of his offensive game, Peyton Manning has mentioned. Adam Gase has never once popped up in conversation, except for to be like, oh yeah, we're facing Adam Gase's team this year. Okay, it'll be a win. Like that's the conversation that happens. I don't know what's happening in New York, but I don't think they're seeing anything other than money, and that's about it.
Zach and Nico, I'll get your guys' opinion on this. Do you think that the coaching or the front office is more important in that situation? Do you think they need to bring in both at the same time and have them work together like we've seen in San Francisco with Lynch and Shanahan? Or do you think that they can maybe keep a good portion of their organization in place and just replace the coach and see what they can do in the upcoming years?
Well, I think in the case of the New York Jets, it's probably best to hit the reset button entirely. You want to, in my opinion, I prefer seeing a coach and GM tandem that both are on the same page. You don't want to go through a year of awkwardness where you're trying to have the GM gauge what the coach is wanting to do or what the coach is going to fit in his idea of what the team is in their future, and kind of vice versa. I would rather see it where you have both positions filled at the same time. And, Adam Gase, I mean, surprising he still has his job. Funny enough, we're not in the same situation in Chicago, but historically Chicago has never fired or does not fire coaches in season. I do not know off the top of my head about New York, but you don't know everything that goes on in an organization. So obviously something is being missed if we have Adam Gase still having his job, or they have plans where they're just going to dissolve it, let this ride out, and maybe see if they can just secure Trevor Lawrence, which – to me, Lawrence is the biggest reason why you'd want to coach for the Jets, because it's almost certain, I think, at this point, unless the Jets find a gear that we have been missing this entire season, and unless Trevor Lawrence doesn't want to come out during this draft when he's at one of his highest points of stock, he might. That's your biggest draw, I think, as a coach. But you take both of them at the same time. I think it's kind of some evidence we've seen within the least half decade, specifically San Francisco, is that you want everyone on the same page. Might as well do it if you're doing it through an entire organization. Get both out of there, reset, get 2 new guys sitting in some new chairs.
Yeah, to piggyback off what Zach just said, I think you add another element to that. You need the GM, coach, and you need the quarterback all on the same page. I think the quarterback comes along with that. You can't have a year where you keep Adam Gase for another year to see what he does with Trevor Lawrence. That's just not an option at this point. You have to reset everything. I think a person that I think the Jets need an organizational shift. I think they need a culture change. I think they need to change so much about them. I think a great person that people aren't really talking about much in the coaching ranks is Robert Saleh down there in San Francisco. I think he could bring a lot of great energy. He's a defensive-minded coach, which I think could be better for the Jets team. Because I mean, Williams or whatever his name is, the guy he was the guy in New Orleans who had the bounty gate too. He's their D coordinator right now. He's just absolutely terrible too. So I think they could have a completely defensive-minded team, and then you bring in an offensive coordinator who is very comfortable with Trevor Lawrence, and that could even make the team better. Because right now everyone is looking at the Jets on their schedule like, oh, this is a steamroll.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
I want to bring something up that I love this, Nico, because Robert Saleh is now a coach being petitioned by the Michigan legislator to the Detroit Lions to have hired. So he is a detractable choice. And now you have actual legislators looking for this. Going to have some competition out there, but I like the pick. I like the coaching.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite coaching potentials next year. Him and Bieniemy, both those 2 guys, would be very, very attractive for the Jets, in my opinion. Either way, you can't have Gase there if you do decide to draft Trevor Lawrence.
Shout out Eric Bieniemy, former University of Colorado great, won their national championship with them. But I think he's probably of the coaches, those are the 2 best head coaching candidates. The other thing that I think we have to think about with the New York Jets job is that when you go and become the head coach of the New York Jets, I mean, head coaches in the NFL have tons of media obligations anyways, but the New York media is something completely different. That's why when people bring up maybe Harbaugh going to New York, I think Harbaugh would cry in the first 5 minutes in his press conference getting grilled by those New York reporters. He doesn't have the kind of edge that you need to have to be able to handle and stand up to that media. And not many, almost all of their franchises outside of maybe the Islanders, the Yankees have had some pretty good success, but most of their organizations in New York can't handle the pressure of just their local media. So you're going to have to figure out a coach who's going to be able to come in and do that as well.
Yeah, was Gase recently the one that was fighting the reporter? The other, like,
he's been fighting that same reporter every week for the past 4 weeks.
Yeah. That's a sign of a coach out the door. Like, seriously.
Doing a Matt Patricia right now. That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, he's literally being asked, "How do you still have a job?" Well, I don't know. I really don't know how I still have a job. Like, how can you do that? Like, honestly, any coach coming in, my answer to any question any media guy asks me from now on is, "I'm better than the last guy." It's just that easy. Like.
Well, the bar's been set really low for that.
Yeah, like, hey, I can handle all the media answers if they want me to. I'll come do it. Screw it.
The Jets would be happy with 2 wins next year. It's a successful season.
Anything better than this 0-16 season.
That's for sure.
Don't worry, I won't be wearing a Jets jersey on this show or on my show at all. Don't worry.
Oh man,
I ain't stressed at all.
They paid me $30 million to go coach. I'll wear a jersey.
Just speaking on this real quick, the Jets are playing the Raiders this weekend, and Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Abram are both out for the week. I think they're on the COVID protocol list. So, I mean, maybe, and the Falcons just beat the crap out of the Raiders. So
Devontae Booker cooked the Broncos. It's not like it's that much of a.
Henry Ruggs and Hunter Renfrow are back. It's okay.
And
the Falcons also. The Falcons also look like they're kicking into a different gear. I mean,
I just really want to see Nico in green and white one time this year, and then he'd be able to be on this show.
Only time you'll be seeing me wear green is St. Patrick's Day. Don't worry.
Oh man, that would be amazing for as great of an introduction as he had last week with the Macho Man shades. That would be amazing for us to have to start out the show with him and
keep dreaming,
brothers
Jimmy.
Leonard Williams.
Keep dreaming.
Leonard Williams isn't even on the Jets anymore. He got traded across the locker room to the Giants.
When Nico wears his Jets jersey,
Yeah, your brother needs to just pre-order a Trevor Lawrence jersey.
When Nico wears a Jets jersey, that will be an official holiday on the Unhinged Sports Network.
When you wear the Jets jersey, can you tape your eyes wide open too, so you can do the Adam Gase face?
I'll wear the bag. I'll wear the bag over my head too, with the little eye holes cut out.
There you go. There you go. Never had to do that as Broncos fan, but maybe you'll have to pick up some lesser fan bases traditions. Before we get into the pick'em for this week, I wanted to just briefly look at the standings. NFC seems to be, kind of separating themselves as the Seahawks and the Saints, the top teams in that conference. What do we think about the Packers sitting right now at the 3rd seed behind Seattle and New Orleans? Had a couple weird games on their schedule where they got beat by teams I don't think they should have. So DJ, how do you feel about the Packers' shot of maybe moving up in the seeding in the NFC?
Packers are kind of fluky. They kind of remind me of the Saints when Drew Brees was at his best, like 2011, 13, 14, where they can beat just about anybody, but just about anybody can beat them at the same time. Like one minute they'll get destroyed by the Buccaneers 38-10 or whatever it was. But at the same time, I can see the Packers beating the Chiefs or the Steelers in the same breath. They're a weird team, so I think if they get a home game or two, they have a good shot to at least get to the championship game. But I wouldn't be surprised if the NFC East team beats them either. So they're weird.
Yeah, I think the Vikings game is kind of the one that stands out, and the Buccaneers game. Nico, go ahead, because I know you want to mention how Aaron Rodgers
Did you just say an
man.
NFC East team? Did you just say an NFC East team is going to beat this Packers team? Hold up, DJ.
Possibly.
I said they could beat them. They could beat them because
which team in that division is going to beat Aaron Rodgers?
The football team.
I didn't say I'd bet on them. I say I could see it happening because you've seen the Packers lose games. They should win all the time.
Oh man, there's no shot an NFC East team beats the Packers in the playoffs. There could be another team. I do think they're on upset watch, but I love Aaron Rodgers. I'll keep saying it every week. He's a bad man. They need a team around him. But to think that the Giants or the Eagles or who knows, even the Cowboys could sneak in, could beat this Packers team, it's not happening. Aaron Rodgers
Cowboys almost beat the Steelers with a 15th string quarterback. I mean, it's possible.
Almost is the key word. Almost.
And
they needed a missed field goal from the Jaguars to beat the Jaguars a couple weeks ago.
I'm just saying I could see the Packers choking. I wouldn't bet on it, but I could see them.
I could see them choking too, but not to an NFC East team.
What about Washington?
Unless Jordan
Alex Smith has got the offense churning better.
Nico, I think you're on an island alone on this one, bud.
I don't understand how I'm on an island on my own over here.
Have you ever seen the Packers play against somebody? And
Aaron Rodgers is a generational talent. There's nothing
Aaron Rodgers
in
is
that.
the next Jay Cutler, except for he throws better.
One at a time.
Oh, no, you did not just compare Aaron Rodgers to Jay Cutler. Oh, my God. I would bet $5,000 that Zach over there, the Bears fan, would die to have Aaron Rodgers over Jay
Everybody
Cutler.
would die.
Are you kidding me? Saying
That
Jay Cutler to Aaron Rodgers?
That
Zach,
Jay Cutler
I'm right there with
comparison.
you. This is just absolutely asinine in my opinion. I can't believe you just said that. That was
Now,
one of the worst takes I have heard on this show ever. Aaron Rodgers is Jay Cutler, everyone. Wow.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Let's hear Kelsey.
Oh my God.
Have you seen a quarterback more relaxed at any point in time in his career than Aaron Rodgers is right now?
Oh my God.
Other than Jay Cutler. During all of Jay Cutler's career, Jay Cutler did not give a shit. Aaron Rodgers doesn't give a shit who he plays. He's going to go do Aaron Rodgers' thing.
Way outweighs Jay Cutler by a million.
I didn't say he wasn't bad.
Then why are we comparing them?
I said he is this current Jay Cutler in the fact he doesn't care. He plays to the level of his opponent because he just doesn't care.
If we're doing that comparison,
because he's like, I can win 16 games, and if I give up this one game, I don't care. I can go win 15 more.
If we're doing outlandish comparisons, I can compare Jay Cutler to my bulldog who sits on his ass and sleeps and eats the whole time and doesn't care about anything, because that makes more of a comparison than Aaron Rodgers.
I paid Bulldog $3 million before I paid Jay Cutler.
Aaron Rodgers is a dog, dude. The dude doesn't have the facial expressions, but he still puts up numbers way better than Jay Cutler ever did.
Let's reel this back in.
Zach, I don't know what this dude's talking about.
We're all friends on the show. We all like each other. We're here to make good content for the show. I wanted to fault to the Bears fan who had to sit through Jay Cutler being his quarterback. Zach, what do you feel about this argument?
First off, what the hell just happened?
I don't know.
I just heard that. Look, I do have to say, Rod, I do not remember many moments Jay Cutler was ever looking happy on the sideline, if we're going to make a comment like that. But Look, Jay Cutler was a gunslinger. He is definitely comparing more to a Brett Favre, but a worse poor man's Brett Favre for how he would try and fit passes through tiny to non-existent holes in the secondary. Also, I am a little more sympathetic to Jay Cutler in recent years, simply because I was a little younger at the time, but also because the Bears' offensive lines during his tenure were some of the worst in franchise history, especially during the 2010s. The fact that Chicago was within one touchdown of Green Bay to going on to take on Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl at one point back in 2010 amazes me now to this day, looking back on that season, considering they were statistically the worst offensive line in the NFL. Nevertheless, though, Jay Cutler speaks for himself. I mean, he had multiple times where he took on Aaron Rodgers himself. He would choke against the Packers in general. And funny enough, his best statistical season is part of the reason why Adam Gase has his job today, because as much as Peyton Manning was part of the Adam Gase era over in Denver with John Fox and, of course, Gary Kubiak, Adam Gase was with Chicago for 2 years, and Jay Cutler's best stats, if we're talking about the times where he had best passing, best amount of touchdowns, made him look like a sustainable, controlled figure in that offense, was with Adam Gase. So you can thank Jay Cutler for making Adam Gase somehow get 2 head coaching positions in the NFL, both in the NFC East. But I do say, for the fact that Jay Cutler is the Bears' all-time quote-unquote best quarterback, it depresses me overall. I don't like the fact that he's there. I still blame Cutler for some games that should have been winnable, obviously, and the Bears deserve better.
Okay,
I'm just flabbergasted. I just don't know what to think anymore.
There's plenty of, everybody has their own opinion. That was more than I was expecting. We got Zach to leave the show. He fell out of his chair after he heard that. I'm going to go with the majority here. I think the Packers are probably not a contender for the NFC Championship. I don't think that they're going to be representing them anytime soon. The year that they won the Super Bowl, they had a badass defense with an attitude. This year, I like Zadarius Smith, and he's a great player, but they're kind of taking on the same personality as their quarterback. And I think, I agree with some of what Kelsey was saying, how Aaron Rodgers kind of just doesn't care most of the time, or doesn't look like he cares and seems to just give up. And I see that translating over to the defensive side of the ball for them as well. I think they have great players on that team. I think they're very talented. If they wanted to, they could be the best team in the league. Hands down. Aaron Jones is a great talent at running back. Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the league. And though they don't draft skill position in the first round, their skill positions still are talented. And then, like Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in the league right now. It is interesting why they are in the situation that they are in. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, and I have to comment on that because you know what? I think the ideal scenario for Green Bay, if you're talking about a team that can come in and rough them up, just look at what the Indianapolis Colts did. The defense that the Green Bay Packers carries is not great front seven-wise on the run game. I'm just saying, if you get a team that is consistent on the run, or at least has a built-up run game or a healthy run game, one like example, say Seattle, who's trying to transition, it looks like more to the run than pass in recent weeks. I think that you can have a talented offense keep up and overpass Green Bay, which is something that has been the case in Green Bay's losses for the most part. Is you have to have a team that can keep up with Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones with production, and you just have to do enough on that end and have the defense get off kilter. That's how I think Green Bay is beaten. I think that's why you see them have the difficulties the way they are against tougher opponents like an Indianapolis Colts roster or Tampa Bay. Remember, they got blown out by the Bucs in Tampa Bay, of course.
Yeah,
too.
I'll add one last thing. Aaron Rodgers won't be the reason why the Packers lose in the playoffs. It'll be that defense, or it'll be something else happening. Aaron Rodgers will lead that team that Packers team will go as far as Aaron Rodgers will go.
Well, I actually just want to say that, as much as I want to say Aaron Rodgers is the best, he's the worst and the best thing that can happen for that team. And it is purely down to his attitude. If you watch enough film on Aaron Rodgers, which, trust me, I have, because he is one of the greatest quarterbacks arm talent-wise, but he is also one of the worst quarterbacks for picking a target and only wanting that target. If you watch him and he'll drop back, he'll have 20 seconds, 30 seconds to throw the ball, and he has Devontae Adams on triple coverage. He only wants to throw to Devontae Adams, so what will he do? He'll throw it 30 yards out of bounds towards Valdez-Scantling, and clearly out of bounds. Like, he's literally hitting first row very clearly, and we all know he has the arm talent. He's the best worst thing to happen to Green Bay, and it's the fact that, if he decides he wants to be the best, that team has nowhere but the top to go. But if he decides he's just keeps doing what he's doing, they only go as far as Aaron Rodgers, and that's what I mean by he's the Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler carried the Bears to what they got. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers carries the Packers to what they get. And if he doesn't want them to win, they won't win. If he doesn't want the win, they won't win. And that's what I mean by he's the next Jay Cutler.
I think it's a valid point. It's kind of that's why we had the RELAX from Aaron Rodgers in the media, because everybody was telling him that you don't show enough emotion on the sideline. You don't look like you care enough in the games. So, he's definitely heard it. He knows that he does it. I just don't think he cares. That's fine. That's how he's going to be.
Yeah.
The thing about professional athletes is that they don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. That's the reason that they're professional athletes. They were told in their mind that they're going to be the best no matter what. And I think that's kind of where we as just regular fans and guys who watch the game all the time and love the game, for as much as we want to think about what we know about the NFL, we don't really know everything that goes into it. These guys are a different kind of breed. They're just, there's something different about them. We're coming up on another break here, but before we'll get into the pick'em right away when we come back, but I'll just mention the standings as it sits now, because we did have a little bit of a change. Nico was the champion coming in off of his first week, and now we have had a new champion. So we'll start at the top. Jim from the J-Dash Show, sitting at 11-3 last week, 29-11 overall. And since we don't have the same amount of games for everybody to pick, his winning percentage is 73%. Nico's coming up right behind him. Nico's coming up right behind him, 9-5 last week, so a little bit down from his first showing on the show. He's 19-8 overall with a 70% winning percentage. I believe the next person is Zach, and Zach is 17-9 overall with a 65% winning percentage. And then the high-low sports guys are, and no offense, guys, but you are the next two. Bringing up the final two spots. Kelsey, 10-4 last week, had a great bounce back week. One game away from going from outhouse to the penthouse, and the Ravens
10 points away. 10 points away.
You had a lot of close losses, and then DJ kind of being just the middle of the road, sitting at 7-7 last week, 15-12 overall, 56% winning percentage, and Kelsey's win percentage is 57.5. So it's overall a pretty tight race in every spot. And we've seen Kelsey came back 1 week, and there's a lot of games to make up ground. So it's by no means over, but Jim is holding a pretty commanding lead on the field right now.
Yeah, we all have winning percentages too, so that's something to accommodate. It's not like we suck at these, right? we're all halfway decent.
Everybody's
I'm doing
over
better
500.
than my Cowboys are.
Yeah, Jim, you got anything? I know you want to rub it in Nico's face, so I'll let you rub it in his face before we take the break here.
What? That I'm currently number one, and that's what usually Patriots are. We're always the best, number one. Besides this year, so yeah.
I'll go ahead and I'll bring up, because Nico and I are for the month of December, we're doing Christmas conversations.
You're gonna bring up one of them.
My Christmas list. I have the second thing on my Christmas list that I want from Santa this year. Every single Boston sports team go to the championship and get beat in the championship. That's what I want. They've had too many championships anyways. And with that, we're gonna take a break. I'm sure I'm gonna get an earful. I'm going to get an earful when we come back, but we'll get into the pick'em right after the break. You're listening to NFL Unhinged.
Due to technical difficulties, and my dumb ass doesn't know how to work the camera sometimes, we're going to have a small little ad. Except we don't have an ad. So we're going to plug the NFL Unhinged show on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. to noon to 12. So it's a 2-hour show. How about that? 2-hour show. I'm going to have to wake my ass up that early at 8 a.m. But be sure to check me, Jimmy out, the J-Dash guys, high-low sports as well. Man, all of us.
Gridiron Gallery.
Gridiron Gallery, a little bit of everything. Maybe we'll have more guests on. Who knows? Be sure to check us out on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, if you want to see what a budgeted Sam Ponder looks like, you can actually, I don't know if we're doing the video, but you'll be able to hear. I'll be moderating, and we got tons of opinions.
You can picture Sam Ponder, but hear Jimmy's voice.
Yeah, that's exactly. Everybody makes. I sound exactly like Sam Ponder, but that's coming up on the Unhinged Network live Sundays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern time.
So without further ado, since we don't have another ad, let's go back to the show.
All right, and now we're going to get into the segment I think most people tune in for. We have our pick'em going, And like I said, I just gave you everybody's winning percentages, the standings. Jim is holding on to the lead. Nico's coming up right on his tail. So let's just get right into it because I know everybody's ready for it. And the first game, the Broncos at Chiefs. We talked a little bit about this one when we started off talking about the COVID situation. I'm pretty sure I know where everybody's going to go with this game. I don't even think we're going to have one detractor. Nico is the only Broncos fan, but I'll go ahead and start with you. What do you think about this matchup between your Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh man, we're not the team that we should be. I hope all I'm hopeful for this game is that it's competitive. I don't think we're gonna win. I'm picking the Chiefs here. I just want it to be competitive. I want Drew Lock to show that he has promise and that there is hopefulness here in Denver and Drew Lock, and that we can ride another year and see what hopefully he develops more and more. Hopefully he gets to play. That's also another thing. I keep checking my phone for fucking updates for something to mess me over. But I'm going with the Chiefs. It's pretty easy. We had a better chance of winning at home against them, especially in the Snow Bowl. And it was a pretty competitive game in the first half. We gave them a kick return touchdown and a pick six. And besides those two, it was a one-score game in the first half. So that's a little more competitive, but there's no shot we win this game. I'm hopeful that's a close game and that we're competitive, but going into Arrowhead is no easy task. So I'm going with the Chiefs.
We all know Chiefs Kingdom is going to show out for this game. They want to control that division because they've seen the Broncos do it twice with Elway and then with Peyton Manning. They kind of own the West. I'm going to go to DJ next. Is there any way you see the Broncos, stealing one from the Chiefs? Maybe the Chiefs overlook a team who nobody knows really what they're going to look like after the abomination they had to put on the field last week?
Maybe if the Chiefs quarterback room catches COVID, and then maybe sprinkle a little bit in the tight end room so Travis Kelce can't sit in and take the snaps, then it's competitive. But Chiefs probably win. Doesn't matter if it's Drew Lock or Hinton or whoever's playing quarterback. I think the Chiefs roll. Broncos will probably quadruple their passing yards from last week and probably triple their score. So positive silver linings, but Chiefs roll.
I think the best thing that the Broncos can hope for to come out of this game is that Drew Lock finally puts two halves together, because he's looked good at times in pretty much every game that he's played, but he's also looked like absolute garbage. And I'm going to stand behind the fact that he's kind of trending towards Dwayne Haskins when you're smiling after throwing 3 interceptions and getting your ass kicked by a division rival, what we saw against Las Vegas. All right, I'll go to Zach next. What do you have for this game? Who are you going with for this one?
Well, I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but to answer your question on how the Broncos can even pull this off, it's with the run game that they have. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay. You got to lean on those guys first before you give Drew Lock any chances. And, hey, Drew Lock had an extra day or two that he could look over at the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the bright sides if I'm going to look at silver linings. But you have to keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Kansas City's defense is opportunistic. They generally get a play or two that go their way, a turnover that goes their way. Tyrann Mathieu, being the honey badger and the way he is an excellent defensive safety. Probably one of the best in, of course, the NFL that I would say. And I would say that the Chiefs are probably out of – or not the Chiefs. The Broncos are probably out of luck. I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to definitely be a KC win.
Yeah, the first game, the defense did play well. I mean, Kelsey, can we see a repeat of that performance? The Chiefs did kind of figure out what the Raiders did to shut their offense down the first game. So do you think that the Broncos can have back-to-back tough games against the Chiefs offense?
I want to say yes. If you ask me preseason, before everything happened, Von Miller, all the injuries and everything, yeah, I would have said, oh, you have a chance to split it. But now it's chalked up. It's written up. It's the Chiefs. Basically, the only chance the Chiefs have to blow this is if what DJ says happens. They catch COVID, and then even then, the NFL is going to postpone the game until next Thursday and make sure it happens. Make sure Patty's back on the field and Travis Kelce's on the field. So yeah, no, it's the Chiefs win.
It's a lock.
All right, Jim, Mr. Number One, Mr. Boston sports fan. What do you think happens in this game on Sunday? It's a Sunday night game. What do you think happens?
No matter if the game is postponed due to COVID or someone gets sick with COVID, they're going to play this game. And the Broncos, in my opinion, don't have enough firepower to keep up with the Chiefs this time around.
I'll say one more thing. The Broncos were one of the few teams to slow Travis Kelce down. He did have his worst game of the year against the Broncos. And Kendall, and one more thing about the Broncos, Kendall hit and scored the same amount of points as your GOAT, Tom Brady, did, Jim, against the Saints. And they both didn't score a touchdown against them. But Kendall Hinton at least put up 3 points, and same with your Buccaneers. So give Kendall Hinton some credit. Tom Brady can't put up – Tom Brady or Kendall Hinton can't put up points against the Saints.
I think that's a clean sweep for everybody on the show. I believe I picked the Chiefs as well when we did our pick 'em on far end of the bench. So that's a clean sweep there. Everybody's going Kansas City. Next game, Colts and Texans. I know DJ's going to be keeping a close eye on this one. The Texans have kind of been frisky the last few weeks since Bill O'Brien got fired as the head coach and GM and towel boy and equipment manager, everything else that he was in that organization. Deshaun Watson's shown and this will be probably a discussion on another episode of this show. Deshaun Watson's shown why he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league and possibly the most talented quarterback of his class, depending on situation, possibly. But the Texans have been, fighting back pretty hard. What do we think is going to happen? I'll go to Kelsey first. What happens in this one?
Look, this is down to injuries at the end of the day. There's too many injuries on the Texans side, and Colts finally getting healthy after last week's abysmal showing. This is another in-division game, and this is one that the Colts won't look at lightly. Phillip Rivers shows up for division games, as I'm sure Nico can attest to.
I don't know about that.
He shows up for division games, man. He will at least chirp enough to piss off somebody, and it's a guarantee that's going to happen in this game. Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines are figuring out exactly how to work as a duo in the backfield, so I think the Colts win this one.
All right. I mean, that's a bold prediction after what we've seen the Colts kind of do the last couple of weeks. DJ, you're a Colts fan. What do you think about this division matchup? Do you think this is a game that possibly sneaks up on the Colts as they try and make their push towards the postseason?
Anything's possible with Deshaun Watson. We've seen him pull off super inhuman things at college and pro level. But losing Will Fuller to suspension and then getting rid of Kenny Stills, they're giving him the Joe Burrow treatment, more or less. We want to put it that way. They're leaving him out to dry. Colts were missing 6 starters last week with COVID and injury and lost one in game. Most of them are coming back. The Texans are going the opposite direction. So, in theory, the Colts should win pretty comfortably, but you never know with Deshaun. I'll pick the Colts because they're healthier and they haven't lost back-to-back games this year. Be a pretty bad time to start now.
Yeah, that would be coming down the stretch of the season. December and late November and December is when you really want to start picking yourself up. Zach, what do you see happening in this one? You nodded your head when I said Deshaun Watson, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. So what do you think? Do you think he's able to pull this one off basically by himself at this point?
Well, he can definitely will offense out of thin air. Trust me, Chicago should have picked him up. I'll say that until the day I die. But if I'm going to be honest with you, this is not a game he's going to win. If I had any chance for them to pull this game off, you needed Will Fuller in that roster. And obviously he's suspended till the end of the year, might not even be playing for the Houston Texans come next year. So without him in that roster, Brandon Cooks is your best option, but I don't see the same rapport as he had with Will Fuller during the last few weeks when the Texans were getting hot. And I just don't think you have enough willing there to offensively overtake the Colts for a top 10 defensive unit in the NFL. Also for the Colts, they're going against the second worst rush defense in the NFL. So Jonathan Taylor, being the running back that he is and progressing towards a better season as it's gone on, and he's had a week off. He was on the COVID list last week as well. So he gets a bit of time to himself to kind of rest and readjust. I would say even without Anthony Costanzo on the line, you should be able to handle Houston just in the run game alone. I don't really think Phillip Rivers needs to do too much in this game to beat Houston. And Rivers, I think, has enough pass protection still with of course, Ryan Kelly and Nelson to back him up to where they can finish off the Texans without much problem.
Yeah, the strength of that Colts offense has been the offensive line ever since they drafted Quentin Nelson, and Costanzo's come on as one of the better tackles in the league as well. Jim, I'll go to you next. What do you see happening in this one? Do you think the Magic Man can pull off – the magician can pull off some sort of magic trick against the Colts this weekend?
Well, let me bring up a couple of things about the Texans. They started the season with Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. That's a dreadful start. 0-3, but since then they're 500. They're 4-4, and they've been very competitive against teams that are right now currently in the playoff picture. And one thing about the Texans, they know their division opponents very well. They play them very tough, no matter if it's in Indy, in Tennessee, or in Jacksonville, or in Houston. For me, this game's in Houston. I'm going to be the person on the other side this time. I think Deshaun Watson does get the upset over the Colts in Houston, but I do see in a couple of weeks the Colts beating the Texans again. It's it's the circle of suck in the AFC South, and it's been like that for a couple years. So yeah, Deshaun Watson's played his ass off in the last he's 3-4 in the last 4 weeks. Yeah, he lost to the Browns in the god awful game, but still, Deshaun Watson is an elite quarterback in the NFL, just playing around some subpar players at a time. You have Will Fuller. It's going to be a big issue. But for some odd reason, I think the Texans are playing better football this time around. And if you took away those 3 weeks in the beginning of the season, they're actually a team in the playoff contention. And right now, they're not in it, but they're not going to be in the playoffs. But they're going to play the Colts pretty competitive, and I think they're going to get the win this weekend.
I mean, I'll come clean. I picked the Texans as in an upset this week on our show. So my co-host Nico, you're the last one to pick in this game. What do you see happening on Sunday?
Yeah, I'll join Jimmy and Jim on the other side of the fence here. The Texans as well. Philip Rivers. I trust Deshaun Watson to find a way to win more than I trust Philip Rivers to find a way to win. That's just a matter of fact. Philip Rivers still doesn't know what uniform he wears every Sunday. He has to check in his locker room before the game and make sure he knows who he's throwing to. That's still a struggle. But we're acting like Will Fuller was the only part of that offense. Deshaun Watson has helped him a lot, but it's not like Will Fuller was making these huge plays. Deshaun Watson was a big factor in all of that. I trust Deshaun Watson to be a lot better than Philip Rivers, and considering it's at home too, I'm going to Texans here. Right now, yeah, that run game for Indianapolis is very good with Jonathan Taylor, but if it's going to come down to it's not going to be a blowout for sure. I think it's going to come down to one of the last scores of the game type of game, but in the end of the game, I trust Deshaun Watson to get down the field more than I do Philip Rivers, so I'm taking the Texans.
You guys
missed T.Y. home.
What's that, DJ?
Yeah,
Let's not forget, Houston is the house that T.Y. built, basically. I mean, averaging 130 per game there.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's T.Y. Hilton though. He was better last year with Jacoby Brissett than he is with Philip Rivers.
Because he hasn't played in Houston yet.
Houston hasn't beaten Indy at home since 2016. So that's 4 years. That's 4 years.
There's a lot more streaks.
That's 4 years of suck at home. So for them to be at home and have an advantage, I don't see it.
Well,
streaks are meant to be broken.
If look who's won the division over the last 5 years the most. That's the Texans.
Yeah, but
if you can't win a game at home.
Also, if I'm going to pick a quarterback to break some sort of streak, I'm going to pick the guy who beat Alabama at the height of Alabama's dynasty in college with a team that Clemson's great, whatever, but that Alabama offense had Derrick Henry. And a whole bunch of other guys that went to the NFL. So Amari Cooper,
22 players.
He's been
just imagine this. Fast forward in 12 months, we might see Trevor Lawrence versus Deshaun Watson in the AFC South.
There you go. All right, that's we're split on. I don't know how to. I'm trying to.
Trevor Lawrence is going to go to the Patriots. It's outlandish now, still, but
AFC South, not
the Jaguars. The Jaguars.
Oh, the Jaguars. Shoot, sorry, my bad.
All right, now let's move on. Zach, I know you got a vested interest in the next game I put on the sheet. Lions at Bears. If you want to talk about a circle of suck, those two teams are right in the middle of it. Lions just
still my term.
Sorry. I'll trademark that saying apparently, circle of suck. But the Lions just come off firing Matt Patricia after getting embarrassed at home on Thanksgiving. But the Bears haven't looked too much better. So what do you see happening in this NFC North matchup?
This is kind of an intriguing one for me because I can easily see Chicago losing this just for how the trend has been lately. Not only, I would say, the vibe around the locker room, but also just because nothing seems to be going right. Last week against Green Bay, they got decimated on both sides of the ball. Here's the deal. I need to see if Akeem Hicks is in. There's no confirmed thing if Hicks is in on that defensive front for Chicago because the Bears are a top 10 run unit with Hicks in. Last week, they got exposed without Akeem Hicks. Obviously, Eddie Goldman being out this year, opting out for COVID reasons, that just piled on to the potential run gains that opponents can have. Quite frankly, though, I think Chicago does have overall a better roster to take out Detroit, even if players in Detroit are rejuvenized with Matt Patricia being kicked out. Because trust me, there are a lot of Detroit players that expressed their disgruntlement with Matt Patricia. I just think if you look at the tape, You look at who's out for Detroit as well, which, by the way, Kenny Galladay is not going to be in again. DeAndre Swift will be there, but he's been in the injury. He's been concussion protocol as of last week. I don't know how effective he's going to be, especially if Hicks is in. If Akeem Hicks is in, and I'm saying he will be for now, I've got Chicago, but it's going to be edging it out just like they did in week 1, maybe about a 3-point victory. And the fact that Mitch Trubisky does throw slightly better, marginally better than Nick Foles, gives me that edge too, to where I think they can pull this out and just edge it to 500 again.
Mitch Trubisky came in with a lot of hype after that first season under Matt Nagy, and he really just hasn't panned out. Nico, I'll go to you next with this game. It's a game again. It's not necessarily a playoff contention matchup, but it is two teams trying to figure out what they're going to be in the upcoming seasons. And I think Matt Nagy's on the hot seat. So what do you think happens this weekend?
Well, on our show on last Wednesday, I did pick the Lions. I think based upon everything I've seen this week, I'm going to switch my stance. I think I'm going to go with the Bears here. The one thing that worries me a lot is the win percentage this year off of teams who just fired their coach coming back is pretty good. I don't know the exact statistic, but I know it's pretty good. So teams that have fired their coach in season have usually gone on to win the next week. So that scares me a little bit. But the things that alter my pick back to the Bears now instead of the Lions is DeAndre Swift is doubtful. So there's a good shot he won't be there. I don't trust AP right now. If it was AP of 10 years ago, then it's a different story, but I don't trust him right now. And then Galladay is as well out. Stafford is one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks, in my opinion, in the league. It's unfortunate he's been stuck over there in Detroit because Detroit doesn't know what to do with themselves in their sports towns for sure right now. So he's been underappreciated very much, but I trust Khalil Mack to get to him very, very much so. And it's going to be very similar to what we saw. I think it was either week 1 or 2, or it's a close game, but I trust the Bears defense to hold the Lions under 20 points.
Yeah,
especially without Swift and Galladay.
Yeah, there's not really anything pointing to the fact that the Lions offense is going to be able to figure it out. The high-low guys are the last two for this game, and I'll go to Kelsey first. What do you see happening in this this matchup between two struggling franchises?
All right, well, first of all, this season they're 100% is the stat you were looking for, Nico. 100% after firing coach. And that's going off of 80% last year. So we've seen a trend that if you fire your coach, you win a game. Secondly, you guys talk about this offense without DeAndre Swift. Since DeAndre Swift has been the feature back in Detroit, Detroit hasn't won a game. It's a fact. And I've said it, and I'll say it again. You have a top-tier running back sitting there in Kerryon Johnson not being used. Adrian Peterson not being used. Why? Since the beginning of the season when you were winning games, you were using them even without Kenny Galladay. You were still winning games. Why'd you go away from him? Why'd you go to DeAndre Swift? After he dropped a pass that cost you a game, he hasn't recovered mentally. He didn't recover mentally. Still, I mean, yeah, sure, he can run fast. Whoop-de-freaking do. He doesn't hold on to the ball. He can't catch the ball. I mean, you name it. He's not been what their answer is. They need to go back to what they started the season at. Very simple passing, very simple offense. Get Hawkinson involved, get Marvin Jones going, get Kerryon and Adrian Peterson going. You'll win this game easily. It doesn't matter. The Bears are going to throw you the ball at least 3 times. You have tons of chances to score. The Bears aren't doing it themselves on offense. They'll do it defensively, but not offensively. They're not scoring. I mean, I don't see why the Lions can't win this game easily.
I'll correct myself. We still have Jim to pick as well, but I'll go DJ first, and then Jim will wrap this game up with picks. DJ, do you see anything different happening? Who do you think comes out of this NFC North matchup?
I want to say the Bears take it. The Lions cut, I think it was Marvin Haller this week, and the reasoning was we want to see what the young guys do, which basically translates to we don't give a shit anymore. And if anyone, we talked about the 100% with after firing coach, we talked about breaking streaks. Who better to break that streak than the Lions? So I'm going to say the Bears take this one just because somebody has to win. Watch it be a tie now because we all pick somebody.
All right, Jim, this is a game of two franchises. I mean, Chicago's underperformed ever since they won the Super Bowl, which has been a hell of a long time ago now. None of us, I don't think any of us were alive. And then the Lions have wasted 2 Hall of Fame guys in Megatron and Barry Sanders in that time as well. So what do you think happens? What franchise takes the next step to maybe possibly becoming competitive again?
Well, and to quote John Madden, the team that scores more points wins the game. still one of the most classic Thanksgiving moments I've ever seen, which was the Lions and the Bears back in 2001. I think it's the game. In that game, the Lions won. Barely. This game, the Lions will win. Barely. That's it. Sorry, Zach. I don't want to bash your Bears, but man, I'm not going to be, looking forward to tuning into this game on Sunday. I'm sorry, bro.
I already bashed them enough. You can bash them all you want. They deserve it. I have no remorse for I have no remorse for the Bears getting bashed because they deserve it for what they put themselves into this year, going from their offseason choices. So you are welcome to, my friend. Go right ahead. I do not mind it whatsoever because I do the exact same thing.
It's a different situation, and I put this game. I know that this game has no playoff implications really. I don't see either of these teams making it in a wild card spot, but it is fun to pick your team. So there you go, and I let you talk about your Bears a little bit, Zach. I would do the same if I was picking for the Bengals. I try to avoid talking about them as much as possible now, especially in the last couple of weeks. Next game, and I'll go back to you, Jim. Patriots at Chargers. I know I picked Justin Herbert to upset the Patriots in Los Angeles. What do you think happens this weekend?
It's an upset. That's a non-upset, bro. I don't know what's with this damn Patriot organization. 2 weeks ago, I was happy that they're falling apart. Positioning themselves for a good draft pick, and all of a sudden they've won back-to-back games. Oh, wait. Here come the Patriots, only a game and a half out of the freaking last wild card. Jesus Christ. We are the worst team. This is the worst Patriot team since, 1982 when I wasn't even born. It's sad when your starting quarterback is 9 for 18 for 84 yards passing. And the 2 interceptions he threw, Jesus Christ. You're not supposed to be a quarterback in the NFL throwing those damn passes. I'm surprised that they beat the freaking Cardinals. I have no idea what happened last weekend. Basically, if you watch my Twitter at JDashShow, I literally post the Cam Newton classic gif of him falling off the bench. Really, how in the hell do you beat Arizona? This team is disorganized. This team can't run the football. This team can't pass. Yes, Julian Edelman's coming back this week. Whoop the freaking do. And you know what? Honestly, I want to see the Chargers win. I'll pick the Chargers, but as of right now, I won't be freaking surprised if the Patriots go into L.A. and win a game with a similar stats that they did against Arizona. I just can't put my finger on this damn team. I want to say they're just as bad as the Jaguars, but they're winning games. The Jaguars are losing games. It's like, who are you? I just know one thing. The Patriots are going to be on free agent watch for a quarterback this offseason, and keep your eye on 2 guys who have interest in the free agent market, and that is Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. So don't be surprised if one of them are wearing Patriot gear next year.
Oh, boy, that would be a change in Matt Stafford's career. Everybody'd go to wishing that he had better, then he'd go to the Patriots and be the absolute most hated man in the league. That would be something. That's why you're here, Jim. You leave the mic smoking after some of your rants. That was a good take. I appreciate you giving the Patriots their just due of how bad they've been this season.
They suck.
Yeah, I agree. But I think they always suck, but they objectively suck this year. Kelsey, Justin Herbert, he's played really good, but the team still hasn't been as successful as they probably should have been. Is this a game where he finally figures out how to finish, or are we going to see the Chargers lose another game within 4 points like, the last 30 that they've had?
Yeah, look, Justin Herbert with Joe Burrow's injury, Justin Herbert took over the Rookie of the Year race easily, and he's going to continue to do so. This just won't be a good game for him. Jim said it. We don't know what's going on with this Patriots team, but there's something about Bill Belichick against rookie quarterbacks. They don't stand a chance against them. And on top of that, I'm telling you, Bill, I said it 2 weeks ago. I think Bill's pride is going to overtake him, and he wants them to get in the playoffs just to prove that it wasn't just Tom Brady. And, you go back and look at it. I think you guys laughed at me then. I think it's still, after they beat the Cardinals, I have no choice but to think that's what it is. And I think it just continues this week. I think the Patriots somehow managed to squeak out another victory somehow, some way. I don't get it.
Nico, I'm going to go to you next. I know this is a game that you probably wish both teams could end up with a loss. The Chargers being a division rival, the Patriots being just a thorn in the NFL side for the last 2 decades, basically. What do you think happens in this game? Has it changed since our podcast on Wednesday?
No, it hasn't. I'm going with the Patriots here as well. It's not like the Chargers have some sort of home field advantage. Yeah, they're going to LA, but even with fans there, that stadium would be majority Patriots fans, even if Tom Brady's not on that team. So the Chargers have never had a home field advantage whatsoever. So don't take that into account. Also, the one big thing that swayed me to the Patriots here is this coaching battle. Anthony Lynn is in my opinion, the second worst coach in the NFL. He does not know how to win football games, and when it comes down to the end of the game, I trust Bill Belichick. As much as it pains me to say this, I trust Bill Belichick to make the right calls and know how to finish a ball game. Anthony Lynn does not know how to do that. This Chargers team hopefully is going to be on the coach watch next year, along with the Jets, along with a bunch of other teams. Justin Herbert is a great talent, but like I said, he's still a rookie, and Bill Belichick and his son over there are still going to be able to scheme up something because they have a lot of good tape, and no one watches tape quite like the Patriots do. So I'm going with the Patriots here as well. They surprised me last week with the Cardinals, but I think this is going to be a much easier win for them.
All right, DJ, does lightning strike twice for the Patriots? Do they pull out two games that maybe they shouldn't have this weekend, last weekend with the Cardinals, and then this weekend in Los Angeles with the Chargers?
I'm going to say the Patriots pull it off. Nico and Kelsey stole my notes and pretty much said everything I was going to say. I'll just kind of add on top of it. Rookie quarterbacks are 5-20 against Bill Belichick in the last handful of years. And Damian Harris has been an absolute monster for most of the season. So he'll go off. Chargers defense is very underperforming. So Patriots win in a disgusting game, but they'll win it comfortably. They'll win it still.
Wow, you guys have more confidence in them than I do. Holy shit!
This is surprising. Let's go ahead and burst that bubble. Zach, what do you see happening? Why do you see this game going either way?
You know, it's funny. I think that this is an either way type of contest. And I'm going to say straight up, I thought Justin Herbert, the way he's played, was my definitive rookie of the year. Maybe by a few steps, but I wouldn't say it was edge. I would say it's Justin Herbert for the most part. If I'm looking at this contest, though, it's going to come down to what type of – are we going to see Austin Eckler take another step back to health coming off of his hamstring and knee injuries they came back from last week? I think that they could. Obviously, the Los Angeles Chargers do have an excellent running back core that they have to accompany him with, and New England has not been as stout in recent years as they have against the run. That does help alleviate Justin Herbert to get some more passes to his comfortable targets, such as Hunter Henry or Keenan Allen. I imagine Keenan Allen's going to be draped most of this game. Mike Williams, who has had sporadic performances all year, this might be a game where he steps up. And Herbert does have rapport with Mike Williams. And when you have Hunter Henry on the opposite side, I think you have enough targets to take advantage of your situation. Give me the Chargers, but give me it by about a field goal. I'm going to say it's going to come down to Mr. Bagley himself nailing the game-winning field goal coming down in the remaining seconds of the fourth quarter.
Thanks, Zach. You're picking the Chargers to win a close game. Something they'd never done.
I know.
How about that?
I'm glad that you gave Eckler a little bit of love. I played with him actually my freshman year when I was playing at Western in college. He was a different kind of guy. He's kind of where I learned how professional athletes are, because he was a three-time All-American going into that season at running back. He muffed one punt, and then the rest of the season he was out there catching punts for 45 minutes after practice. The dude was just unreal in work ethic, so I'm glad that he's back healthy. And he had a good game last week, over 100 yards from scrimmage. He's a hell of a receiver out of the backfield. I think that he's going to make life a lot easier for Justin Herbert the more comfortable he gets back. So now we'll move on. Couple more games that we're going to go pretty in depth on. We might have to take another break here because Zoom likes to charge out the ass if you don't want to pay, if you want unlimited time on your meetings. But the next game, kind of a beat 'em up game. This is going to be deciding, I think, of the team who's going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage moving towards the end of the season. Both 8-3, the Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans. And I'm going to go to DJ because the Titans are leading the division that his team is in, and they beat the Colts in the last time that they played after they came back from that embarrassing Thursday night loss. So what do you see happening between these two very tough teams?
When you set it up like that, it sounds like I'm going to pick this completely biasly, but I had the Browns winning because Nick Chubb's back and healthy and he's an absolute monster, and they're 6-1 when he plays. And Baker has not looked terrible when he's had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Sure, he has the Twitter gifs of him missing wide open touchdowns, but he's not throwing terrible picks. And Myles Garrett's coming back healthy. The defense is starting to click. So I'm going to say the Browns continue rolling because they know they can't really fall behind. The Titans, they think they have the division at this point too. I mean, they have about a game and a half lead, I think. where the Browns, they're kind of in that tweener spot where if they lose one, they could fall all the way out of the playoffs. So I'll take the Browns. Nick Chubb goes ballistic.
Nico, I'm going to go to you next because you've mentioned it a couple times. You're a closet Titans fan. Love Will Compton, love Taylor Lewan. Shout out Busting with the Boys. Hopefully, I'd love to be on their show. I know everybody here would love to be on their show. But what do you see happening in this game? I think it's going to be a very tough, grinded out game. What do you see happening?
Yeah, I'm going Titans as well. People are sleeping on one of the most underrated seasons this far at the wide receiver position is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has been an absolute animal. Ryan Tannehill right now is doing exactly what the Titans need from him, and that is to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and to make smart plays when throwing the ball. Don't make the stupid plays. And right now, I'll be honest with you, Baker is trying a little too much. Without Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, that team was struggling a lot. They were still winning games, but they were struggling. They have their first winning or first 500 season, and I don't know how long. If they lose out, they'll still be 500, but I'm picking the Titans here because Derrick Henry's that dude. He's an animal. I love Nick Chubb and I love Kareem Hunt. Actually, I won't say I love Kareem Hunt because he has some problems with him. But I love Derrick Henry, though, man. Derrick Henry's an absolute stud. And that defense for Tennessee is slowly getting it together. Clowney is starting to get into form. It took him a little while to get into the form he was from a few years back. And then now that secondary with Byard is looking better. And Rashawn Evans and Jayon Brown are looking a lot better, too, inside there. So I trust the Titans defense to slow down Nick Chubb more than I trust the Browns defense to slow down Derrick Henry. So that's why I'm taking the Titans.
A couple of things just based off what you said. Kareem Hunt's really kicked it into gear since, he had to take over a little bit more of a role from Nick Chubb. And I'll go back to one of my favorite football movies, one of the best quotes of all time. All Ryan Tannehill has to do is exist in between those 3 seconds of the snap and him getting Derrick Henry the ball. That's all he has to do for that Titans team. So I agree with everything you said there.
And dump the ball off to A.J. Brown.
Yeah, you can throw it to A.J. Brown if you really absolutely have to. Jim, got short time here, but what do you think is going to happen in this game? I think this is a better matchup than anybody expected going into the season. What do you think?
It could be, but I'm going to bring up 2 points. Baker Mayfield was basically showing what Peyton Manning was on Saturday Night Live to his receivers last week against the Jaguars. Wide open receivers, throwing in the back of the helmet of the receivers, throwing 5 yards in front of them when they're wide open, the closest defender maybe 10 yards. And also, earlier today, Colin Cowherd tweeted out that if the Browns don't beat the Titans, Baker Mayfield might be replaced. And if the Browns are already thinking about that at 8-3, that means they don't trust him, period. And you have to have a quarterback that hits wide open receivers. And he hasn't been hitting any wide open receivers. It's going to come down to the running game, and I trust the beast himself in Tennessee. Give me the Titans.
All right, there's a lot to digest there. And you know what? We're going to go ahead and get in the break because I want to give Kelsey and Zach enough time so that they can get everything out. So we'll go a quick break, and then we'll come back, finish up the pick'em here on NFL UnHinged.
Bench warmers, this week we have a special thing. Fanatics is sponsoring our first segment of the week. So it's the Center of Attention, brought to you by our friends over at Fanatics. Be sure to go check it out. It's every Monday as we're talking about this, but they have great deals all week. But now, without further ado, man, let's get into everything now. My Center of Attention this week is going to revolve around the commissioners of all the leagues.
This is my blues.
All right, we're back. NFL Unhinged, finishing out this pick'em, and we're talking about the Browns going into Tennessee, taking on the Colts, and we've kind of been split on this one so far. So Kelsey, Zach, you guys have yet to make your picks. I'll go ahead and have Zach start. What do you think happens this week? Do you trust Derrick Henry? Do you trust maybe Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt a little bit more?
This was a difficult one for me to choose, a very close one on paper, especially on the statistical categories in general. Both these are running dynamic-based teams. However, I have to look at the passing game, and I haven't seen enough out of Baker Mayfield lately. Of course, Baker hasn't had to do much because you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the backfield, but I think it's really going to come down to who's the better passer in this contest. Both defenses have been giving up at least 350 a clip per game. Total yardage, of course. Tennessee is much worse, by the way. They're the bottom 10 in the league. So for Baker Mayfield's sake, you have a diamond of a contest for yourself to capitalize. However, I've not seen this Browns team take on a legitimate AFC contender and come out looking like they are at least on top, unless it's Indianapolis. But Indianapolis this year has been at times off their game. Cleveland was one of those contests. I also would say that Baker has shown that he is not as accurate at times as we saw last week. Plenty of memes, of course, of missing a wide open touchdown. I'm going to take Tennessee. This is a game that I think that is atypical for them this year, a close contest. They're going to grind that one out, similar to how it was the beginning of the season. And Derrick Henry is going to open up passing opportunities for A.J. Brown and as well as Corey Davis. Give me the Titans in a close matchup by 7.
I said it on our show. I think this is going to be the game where playoff football comes down to who can control the line of scrimmage, and both these teams love to try and control the line of scrimmage. So whoever comes out on top in this game, I think, has the edge moving towards the end of the season. Kelsey, last pick for this game. What do you think happens? I think this looks at, as a former offensive lineman, I love this matchup because I can't wait to see how many times